Good morning again, if we may start. Let's go back to our deep mathematical equations and philosophical pondering. We established that our consumption depends on our disposable income, which depends on our income and our taxes, net taxes. Okay? We said our consumption will increase as our disposable income increases. Okay? But it's not going to increase too much. And too much here is very well defined, right? It says your consumption increase at most can be equal to your disposable income increase. So B, the marginal propensity to consume, will be between 0 and 1. Okay? Good. Any questions about this? This is the first thing that actually requires you to think about something, okay, in this class. So if we are past this hurdle, the rest is downhill, okay? Now, throughout the semester, this is standard economist notation. We're going to write things like, let's say C is equal to A plus B y minus taxes, okay? And then write, let's say I equal to I bar, okay? Whenever we have a bar on something, we're going to say, this means this is a constant, okay? I'm assuming investment is constant at some level, I bar, okay? So this is a number, 576, okay? Government spending is constant, and let's have net exports equal to 0. This is a closed economy with a constant government spending, constant investment spending, okay? And consumption given by disposable income. Agreed? All right. The question here is, our aggregate expenditure then is C plus I plus G plus net exports. That's equal to A plus BY minus BT. So we have to specify taxes, right? Are taxes constant? Are they changing? What is happening? We have to say something about this. Let's assume those are constant too. Okay? Minus BT bar plus I bar plus G bar plus 0. All I'm doing is I'm saying aggregate expenditure is consumption, investment, government spending, and exports. I'm just plugging in my assumptions here. Now, we have two things, right? We have aggregate expenditure and we have output. These are the things that we don't know. I already told you this is a number, right? I know what this number is. This is a number, I know what this number is. This is a number, this is a number, this is a number, and yes, 0 is also a number, okay? So I know everything but aggregate expenditure and output. This poses something of a problem because this is one equation and two unknowns, which in general we can solve, okay? But we can plot this. Can I graph this? It usually helps to do the following exercise. I could say, let me write this as following. A minus BT bar plus I bar plus G bar. Okay, these are all constants. I'm going to call these capital A bar. Whatever, sum of the constants. Okay? Why? I'm lazy. I don't want to write this every time. Okay? That's the only reason. Plus BY. It turns out this is a particularly simple expression, right? Yep. What I have here is aggregate expenditure is equal to some constant A bar plus BY. Can I draw a graph of this? If I want to do something like, you know, I'm very adventurous, so I'm going to have Y here and aggregate expenditure here, and I'm going to plot the relationship between these two. Do I know how to plot this? So if I have something like y equals a plus bx, and I wanted to plot this. Could I do this? And if I call like y, ae, and x, y, can I still do this? Thank you. So let's see. There are several, several things might be going, well, at most 2 things might be going on. Early Monday morning, you haven't woken up yet, or the university entrance exam is a big lie and you just got here by lottery. The question is, I have a constant, right? Variable equals constant plus constant times variable. Can I plot this? You must have done this like 300 million times. Like for example, when y is 0, what is aggregate expenditure? A bar. Ah, very good. We call this the intercept, right? Okay. When y is 1, what is aggregate expenditure? A bar plus. Very good. You're waking up. Okay. So we have a term for this in B in mathematics. It's called, very good, it's called the slope, yes. You're taking all those calculus lectures for that, okay? So for our purposes, we have a relationship like this, okay? Is the slope of this line, what can I say about the slope of this line? It's B, okay? Is this thing, is this angle less than or more than 45 degrees? Very good. Why? So some of you are able to think in these deep mathematical terms, saying if B is 1, then this is going to be a 45-degree line. Okay? Since B is less than 1, this has to be less than 45 degrees. This is going to come handy later. Okay? So this here is B, right? All I'm doing is I'm drawing a straight line. Okay? That's all I'm doing. Right? Aggregate expenditure, and this is because the way we modeled this. This is perhaps the most important word you're going to learn in this class. Model. I am now teaching you a particular model. Okay? This is how economists think. We think in terms of models. What is a model? Look, understanding what the model is gives you the answer to, in what way, economics is different from chemistry. Okay? You have to understand, definitions are one thing, okay? There's one definition of GDP that's the correct definition because, a bunch of guys sit down together and decide we're going to call this the GDP, okay? But once you begin to think about economic relationships, that's something else. We don't have a common agreement on everything, okay? People differ in, right? Think of the people who are running think of the government and the opposition in Turkey, okay? Do they think good economic policy is the same policy? Do they have the same recipe to, make Turkey grow faster? Why not? That's a good question, right? If you ask them the question, if I drop this pencil, whatever, board marker, how fast would it fall? Would they give you different answers? They might, but they shouldn't. Okay? Right? I mean, in one sense, in one case, you're learning about and you're talking of a law of physics. Okay? Economics doesn't have laws of this kind. Right? We have models. A model is an abstraction. Soyutlama. Here's what I'm doing. I'm telling you that, look, the world is way too complicated for me to understand. Okay? I just don't get it. But I could answer some important questions by thinking of a simpler world, a model world, a toy world. Okay? What are the simplifications I'm using? I'm saying, well, investment is constant. Is investment constant in the world? No. Okay? But it does make my life easier to assume this, okay? And I will be able to answer an important question I want to answer, okay? I'm saying, look, let's have consumption depend linearly on disposable income. This formulation says, if you have no income, okay, you have zero, nothing. I give you 1 lira. How much of it will you consume? Okay? I'm not asking you what the correct answer is. I'm asking you what have we modeled. Okay? We're saying the answer is B. If you have nothing, I give you 1 lira, you consume B of it. If you have a trillion zillion liras and I give you 1 more, how much of it do you consume? B. Does this make sense? Do you think it's really the case that if you give a little money to the poorest poor and the richest rich, they choose to consume the same share of it? No. Then why are we writing it this way? It makes my life easier. That's what a model is. Okay? I could have written it in a way that depends on income, and I could have done this, you know, a fancy nonlinear function. That wouldn't help me teach this to you. Okay? So this is a model that's easy to teach. But it's important that it is a model. And in some fundamental senses, okay, we're going to get some answer about what GDP is from this model. And you have to understand that we're building it in. Right? The answer is going to be whatever because of the assumptions that we made. And that's perhaps the most important thing you're going to learn. Because people talk as if, you know, economics is physics. Right? We've discovered the law and it says, you know, the world works this way and therefore we should do this. We don't know these things. Okay? So this model, for example, is a simplified version of what is called the Keynesian model. Right? I do think this is mostly correct, okay? But you don't have to agree with me, right? There are alternatives. So in this model, we have aggregate expenditure as a linear function of GDP. This is, things are as simple as possible, okay? Now, this graph turns out to be a very useful, helpful thinking device. Let me draw this again. Okay, that's A bar. The slope is B. And this is the aggregate expenditure relationship. Remember, aggregate expenditure is the answer to the question, how much you're going to use, how much you're going to spend on Turkish goods and services. That means goods and services produced in Turkey. Okay? Now let's think of these points. Let's think of this point. This is GDP, right? This is your income. This is your production. This is how much you produced this year, okay? And this is how much you're using this year, okay? You and foreigners who are buying your goods. And the question is a point like this a reasonable point that we should imagine the economy might operate at, okay? Now, how much are we producing at this point? Production is measured by expenditure or GDP? GDP, okay? At this point, what is GDP? Zero. Very good. We're producing nothing. Are we using things? Are we spending? Okay? Is this possible? Can we do this? Sure. If there are stocks of things that were produced last year, okay, you can buy and use them. Okay? And in fact, we had terminology for this, right? We call these inventories. Okay? Firms do production. They don't sell all of their production. In fact, they plan on not selling all of their production, right? They store some of their goods. These are inventories. Okay? Why do they store some of their goods? Because they know that things like this can happen. Every now and then people say, oh, even though we haven't produced much, let's consume. Okay? Let's invest. Well, when your customers come to you and say, I want to buy, are you happy if you tell them, I don't have anything to sell? This isn't a deep management science question, right? Firms want to have goods to sell when people come to their doors. Okay? So they keep inventories. This is going to be the key driver of all of the arguments that's going to follow, okay? The inventories. Are we going to think of these as something that the firms want to have, or are these an accident? Firms want to have this, okay? But the quantity is not quite clear. If you are operating at this point, okay? Let's call this point A for A bar, okay? If you're at point A, are you a happy firm? Let's have a producer. Would you like to be the producer today? Let's have someone from the higher ups, like the human. What's your name? Dennis. Okay, so now you're the chief operating officers and chief executive officer and owner and everything of Dennis Enterprises holding companies, whatever. What are you producing? The hardest question. What are you producing? Name a good. What? You're producing goods. Yes, I'd like a particular example of a good.
Let's say shampoo.
Shampoo. That's the first. Good. You're producing shampoo. Okay. Now, if we're at this point A, and looking here, I should be writing in larger letters. If we are at point A, okay, have you produced any shampoo this year?
I have, but as inventories.
If they are inventories, you didn't produce them this year, right? You produced them earlier, they're just sitting there. In fact, since Y is 0, since GDP is 0, have you produced anything? No. Okay? But are you selling shampoo?
No.
Look there. Is there expenditure on shampoo? Yes. So the answer isn't on my face, okay? It's there. You haven't produced any shampoo, but you are selling shampoo. What is happening to your inventories? Are they going up or down? Your inventories are falling, right? You're selling shampoo. People suddenly realize that they should wash their hair, okay? There is no income, but still, they're coming and buying your goods. Okay. Now, this is a key question. Is this an equilibrium point for the economy? You're producing no shampoo, but you're selling shampoo. No. But to properly answer this question, we have to have a good definition of equilibrium. What is equilibrium? Let me tell you what the answer isn't. Okay? The answer isn't where demand equals supply. Okay? I'm asking you a broad definition of equilibrium. Does anyone know what equilibrium is? It will be the case, but that's not the definition of equilibrium again. I just told you that's not the answer. Look, where income equals production, okay? Income always equals production by definition. Where expenditures equals production will be an equilibrium point. But to understand why that's an equilibrium point, we have to have a definition of equilibrium, okay? Supply equals demand is an equilibrium point, but if I ask you why is that an equilibrium, how are you going to answer this? You haven't even defined equilibrium. So for an economist, okay, what is equilibrium? So after taking a full semester of 101 and talking about equilibrium every single lecture, right, you now realize that you don't even know what you're talking about, which is kind of sad.
The optimal production.
Okay, let me ask you, why is that an equilibrium point? How are you going to answer this without defining equilibrium? Mumble, mumble, no. Okay, this is something very important. We're going to come back to your shampoo production, okay? But first, let's define equilibrium. Equilibrium, for an economist, has to do with behavior, okay? We are a bunch of people. We're making decisions. We're making decisions based on other people's decisions. They are making decisions based on our decisions, right? How I behave affects how you behave, okay? If we're constantly changing our behavior, are we at an equilibrium? Let me ask you again. If we are constantly changing our behavior, are we at an equilibrium? Oh, okay. Forget constantly. If we're changing our behavior all the time, okay, in whatever way, are we at an equilibrium? No. Okay? Look. This is how you get to the definition of equilibrium. Okay? Let's think of this. Let's think that, so forget the economics example, okay? Let's think of something entirely different. Say we're boxers, right? That's going to be a very hard example. Let me not get into there. Ask me some other time about the boxing equilibrium example, all right? But there are many examples of the following kind. Think that the year is 1985, okay? There's the Soviet Union, there's the United States, and these guys are two big powers, okay? And they're not quite fighting, they're kind of fighting, right? There's a reason why this thing was called the Cold War, okay? It's the Cold War. Now, why was this a Cold War, but not an actual war? Yes, but why? Why didn't, for example, the United States send nuclear weapons and, had a nuclear bombardment of Russia? Because Russia can do that also. If you can do this, but if you know that if you do this, the other one will also do it, are you going to do this? Is the other side going to do this? Is this an equilibrium? Okay? Equilibrium is when no party, when given the actions of others, no one has an incentive to change his or her behavior. Okay? Equilibrium is defined via incentives. What's an incentive? In Turkish, it's teşvik. What is an incentive? Present. Pleasure. Pressure. Okay. You should speak up. It takes me like 15 trials to understand what you're saying. It's kind of right what an incentive is. What is an incentive? Incentives are the root of economics. Okay? It's the root of capitalism. Why do you produce? You get paid for it. Okay? If you weren't paid for it, would you produce? So the payment is your incentive to do production. Okay? In fact, if the price mechanism works, why does it work? It gives the right incentives, right? Let's say this blue board marker sells for 5 liras and this black board marker sells for 2 liras. And you're a board marker producer. Which one would you rather produce?
5.
Okay? The price is an incentive for the producer to produce more of the more expensive one. Why is this more expensive? Because people want this more. Okay? So the price mechanism gives you the right incentives if capitalism works properly. Okay? Now, I hope, well, if I haven't done this, this will be in your homework. Defining what an incentive is, okay? And defining equilibrium by using the word incentive. But that's the correct definition of equilibrium, right? When I told you why the Russia-US example is an equilibrium, now you understand what an equilibrium is, okay? So supply equals demand is an equilibrium because given where demand is, producers are happy to produce at this point. Given where production is, consumers are happy to buy at this point. Nobody wants to change their behavior. That's why that's an equilibrium, okay? Now let's ask, is this point an equilibrium? The owner of Dennis Enterprises Holdings and other companies is going to answer, right? If you see that you're not producing anything, but your shampoo is being sold and your inventories are running out, do you have an incentive to change your behavior? Your behavior is not producing anything. Do you still want to continue not to produce?
I'm not in the equilibrium point, but I have an incentive because like I'm selling the shampoo.
Yep. So are you going to increase your production? Yes. Up. Okay. So we're almost done now. She says, if I see that my inventories are being sold out, okay, if I see that my inventories are being reduced, I conclude from this that people want these goods and I'm not producing enough, and therefore I'm going to increase production. Would you all do the same?
Yes.
Should I ask you one by one? All right? Save me the pain, right? You would all do the same. If you see that your goods are being sold at a faster rate than you produce, are you going to produce more? Yes. Okay? What is going to happen if you produce more? Are we still at the 0 point? No. So that's not an answer. Okay? I mean, no is a word, is, when you're at primary school. So output, Y, is going to increase. So we're moving in this direction. Do we agree? What has happened to aggregate expenditure? Is it also increasing? Yes. So what has happened to her shampoo? She's producing more shampoo. But are we also buying more shampoo? Yes. Now, are things getting better or worse? How do we know? Well, the question is, how do we know we're moving towards an equilibrium and not away from this? How do we know that, she began to produce, I don't know, $5 worth of shampoo, okay? How do we know that suddenly we decided to increase our shampoo demand, okay, shampoo expenditure by 10? That's the whole business about the B, right? Slope is less than 1. That's why that's so important for us, okay? When she produced one shampoo, did we get one shampoo's worth of income? Did we produce one shampoo's worth of income? This is about where I walk out of the class and tell you just figure it out on your own, okay? Is a shampoo produced? Yes, I told you, Jen, right? Well, she told us. She's going to produce shampoo. She produced 1 unit of shampoo. Do we get one shampoo's worth of income? Yes, production is income, okay? But this is about where I lose it, right? Because I told you that production is income. How many times already? Many, okay? So don't make me say it again. Here's a model question now. What happened to my disposable income? Did it also increase by 1? This is why this is the model question. What happened to taxes? Did taxes change? I assumed taxes are constant. Okay, now we're talking in the model world. This is why I assume taxes are constant, so that my life is easy, right? Taxes are constant, so when income changes, disposable income changes as much. Okay? What happened to disposable income? Production increased by 1. Total income increased by 1. What happened to disposable income? Increased by 1. Okay? When disposable income increases by 1, what happens to aggregate expenditure? Okay, increases, this is half of it. Actually, we know how much it increases, right? 1B, that's B. Okay? It increases by B. So when you get to this 1 point, you get to this point where this is A bar plus B. Okay? He had enough of this. Now, is this an equilibrium point? Let's call this point B. Okay? Is this an equilibrium point? It's no longer as obvious, okay? We don't know the answer to this. It depends on what is happening to your inventories. Say you're producing 1. Okay? But it turns out people are buying more than 1. So this A bar plus B is greater than 1. Okay? If people are buying more than 1, are your inventories still declining? Yes. If your inventories are still declining, are you telling yourself, oh, I'm producing just enough? No. Are you going to not change production, increase production, or decrease production? You have some very good advice. You're going to increase production. Okay? So around here, you increase production. Okay? Now let's think about a point like this, where let's say this point is 10,000, okay, and this point is 6,000. Could that be? Yes, sure. But slope is less than 1, right? When you go far out enough, it has to be that these numbers are greater than these numbers. Okay? So you're producing 10,000 units of shampoo, okay? Let's say, let's pick on someone else. Who? The gentleman in the blue shirt. You, yes. Let's say you're the production manager, okay? You're producing 10,000 units. I really have to write larger. And you really have to tell me this. I can barely read what I've written there. So this is 10,000 and this is 6,000, okay? You're producing 10,000 units of shampoo, right? This is the shampoo economy. But expenditure is 6,000 units of shampoo. What is happening to the other 4,000? This is his question, okay? Yes, it goes to inventory. So your inventories are going increasing and increasing. Are you happy? Well, she isn't. She's about to fire you, right? You're keeping on producing all of these things. Are they being sold? Really? You're producing 10,000 and you're selling 6,000. Okay? That's what it means. You're increasing your inventories. Did you want to increase your inventories this much? Every year you're dumping new shampoo into the inventories. Now, is this a happy firm? No. Is this an equilibrium point? Will you change your behavior? Will you continue to produce 10,000 or will you produce more or less? You're going to produce less. Very good. So it says, well, not it. He says, it here is the theory, okay? The theory, which he agrees with, says, if your production is too little, then your expenditure is more than the production, inventories are falling, then firms have an incentive to increase production. That's not an equilibrium point. If your production is too much, and too much here is well defined, right? Larger than the total expenditure, then you're putting stuff into your inventories. Inventories are increasing, okay? That's not an equilibrium either, because then firms want to decrease production. That kind of gives us a sense of where this equilibrium is going to be, right? It's going to be at the point where this is your 45-degree line, okay? This is where this is some y star equilibrium. Let's call this ye, right? And expenditure is also equal to ye. Let me draw this again here. So for the first time, it looks like we've done something serious, right? Equations, graphs, whatever, right? It does look like a lecture finally. So we're saying you have Y here, GDP here, or income here, and aggregate expenditure here. Aggregate expenditure is a relationship between income and expenditure, and this is my 45-degree line, okay? I am sure that this 45-degree line is going to intersect this one. How? Because I know this is flatter, right? Because I'm clever, I wrote a decent model, okay? At this point, what is special about the 45-degree line? Yeah. Slope is 1, y equals x, right? For our purposes, y equals aggregate expenditure, okay? So along this line, expenditure equals income, okay? In particular, at this point, I'm both on the expenditure line, so that this tells me how much people want to spend given GDP, right? And this tells me that spending is equal to the actual GDP, okay? Is this an equilibrium point? I want you to understand that, this is not an equilibrium point because, this line happens to cross that line, okay? You have to understand what equilibrium is, and you have to understand the mechanics of how you get to that equilibrium, okay? Equilibrium is when nobody has an incentive to change their behavior. The bodies here are the people who want to do the spending, the expenditure, okay? And the firms who do the production. When you're at this point, okay, are people spending as much as they want to spend given their income? Yes, right? That's what this line is, okay? Aggregate expenditure tells you, given your income, given your disposable income, this is how much you want to spend, okay? So the consumer, on all points on this line, the demand side, this is really bad language, I shouldn't say that. The expenditure is at the correct level from the perspective of the people who are spending, okay? But then we ask, well, what about the people who are producing these things, okay? We said a point like this isn't very good. Because the producers say, we're not producing much, but we're selling a lot, so our inventories are running down, okay? This is an involuntary, unwanted decline in inventories, okay? If it's involuntary, if you don't want this, are you going to change your behavior? Yes, that's why this is not an equilibrium point. You increase your production, okay? So you're now moving this way. If you were at a point like this, you're producing a boatload, but people don't want to buy that much. They don't want to spend that much. Now you're just producing them, putting them aside, producing them, putting them aside. Are you happy? No. Do you have an incentive to change your behavior? Yes. Now you have an involuntary increase in inventories, okay? So you decrease production. At this point, are your inventories changing? Your production? Yep. You sell your whole production, okay? The most important thing here is to remember the following. So yes, that's the equilibrium point, okay? And the important bit to remember is the following. This measure of investment, okay? This is going to be slightly tricky. I'm going to say this like 5 times, okay? This measure of investment is different from your GDP measure of investment, okay? Remember, look, we said aggregate expenditure is C plus I plus G plus net exports, okay? What is GDP? Well, C plus G plus I plus net exports, okay? But I just told you that those are different things. How are they different? How can they be different? The answer is, it's not the same investment that we're talking about, okay? And we had this conversation a little bit earlier. This is the following sense. Aggregate expenditure is what you want to do, okay? How much you want to spend. That's a desired thing, okay? Given my income, this is what I want to do, okay? At any level of income, do firms want to keep some inventories? Sure, okay? That's in aggregate expenditure. I'm going to produce, I'm going to put this much in the inventories, okay? But say you produce too much. You have to put whatever you didn't sell into the inventories, okay? Is that in the aggregate expenditure? No. Is it in the GDP? Yes. That's how it's different, okay? The GDP investment is actual investment. The expenditure investment is desired investment, okay? At equilibrium, is actual investment equal to desired investment? Yes, okay? That's why that's an equilibrium. What you do is equal to what you want to do, therefore you don't change your behavior. Ah, this is how I define equilibrium. Now let's talk about this again, okay? We keep on asking questions like, say you produce shoes, okay? You produced 300 pairs, you sold 250 pairs, okay? What is the GDP contribution? 300 or 250? 300, okay? But when I look at GDP by expenditure, is this in consumption? 250 pairs are in consumption. Somebody bought them, okay? But where is the other 50? They are in inventories, okay? So in which component do I see these? Do I see them in consumption, investment, government spending, or net exports? They're in investments, right? I put inventories into investment, okay? So the shoe contribution of the GDP is, or the shoe contribution to the GDP is 300. 250 in consumption, 50 in inventories, okay? When I'm writing aggregate expenditure, this is given how much you produce, okay? How much do people want to spend? What is the consumption? That's 250, okay? Given that you produced 300 pairs of shoes, people wanted to buy 250 pairs. They bought them. Did you want to increase your inventories? No. Could the answer be yes? Could a firm say, I want to increase my inventories? Sure, why not? If they did, okay, would that be an equilibrium point? Yes, yes, look, what you do is equal to what you want to do, okay? That's the whole point. But if that's the case, if the firm says, I want to increase my inventories by 50, okay, would desired investment also be higher by 50? Sure, the firm says, I want to increase my inventories. I want to increase my inventories. I know I'm going to sell 250 pairs. I'm going to produce 300 anyway because I want to put 50 into my inventories. Could this happen? Sure, why not? Okay? If it happens, would this be equilibrium behavior? Yes. What you do is equal to what you want to do. Okay? You produce 300. Somebody wants to buy and consume 250. Somebody wants to put 250 into inventories. Okay? That's equilibrium. If the firm said, I want to produce 300 pairs, and I think I will sell 300 pairs to consumers. Okay? But consumers only want to buy 250. Is this equilibrium? No. What happens to the other 50? Inventories. Are we going to keep on producing 300 next year? No, right? You're at a point like this, you move down. This is your equilibrium point. Okay? This is why it's really, really important that you don't have this memorized understanding of equilibrium where, x equals y, whatever, okay? You have to understand why an equilibrium is an equilibrium, okay? You have to have a equilibrium definition first and then say, yes, given my definition of equilibrium, a point like this would be an equilibrium. Our definition of equilibrium, okay? The economist's definition of equilibrium is, given the behavior of others, nobody has an incentive to change his or her behavior. Okay? Given the behavior of the people who spend, do the producers want to change their behavior here? No. Their inventories aren't changing, they're happy. Okay? Given the behavior, given the production, given the behavior of the producers, do the people who spend want to change their behavior? No. Right? That's what this line is. Whenever they're on this line, they're saying, yes, given the income, this is how much we want to produce. Well, given the production and income, this is how much we want to spend. So producers don't want to change their production behavior. People who spend don't want to change their spending behavior. Is this an equilibrium? Yes. This is why this is an equilibrium. Okay? So what happened? We had this one equation and two unknowns, and suddenly we solved this. By what magic? I suddenly told you, this is going to be the equilibrium value of y, right? How was I able to solve this? Speak up. We made something, but I don't hear what. Yes, thank you. She's saying, you're lying, and I am lying. Okay? I didn't solve one equation and two unknowns. I introduced one more equation. That 45-degree line is the second equation. Okay? I said, look, aggregate expenditure is defined by this. Okay? Equilibrium requires expenditure to be equal to output, to be equal to income. Okay? Thus, I have to have this. Aggregate expenditure equals y. This is the equilibrium condition. What is the graphical representation of this line? That's the 45-degree line. Okay? The intersection of those two lines is the simultaneous solution of these two equations. Okay? Can I solve two equations and two unknowns? I'm a Turkish high school graduate. I should be able to do this. Okay? So we're golden. We're going to see that this is going to be the most useful equation ever. All right? On Wednesday. Thank you.